Well, hello and welcome to my second try at reviewing a comic book in video form. And as sadly the only comment I got on my last video was in English, I thought, well, maybe I should do an episode in English. And it fits because the book is in English as well. It's called Adventures in Cartooning. It was written and drawn by James Sturm, Andrew Arnold, and Alexis Frederick Frost of the Center for Cartoon Studies. And this sounds very serious, but as you can see, it's not really all that serious with, the little brave knight here and then the elf with a giant pencil drawing the dragon for the knight, because, the knight needs someone to fight. It was put up by First Second Publishing, and they're a small publisher of mainly original, I think only original graphic novels, and they're doing a really good job, I think. All the books have a certain quality, both in the drawings as well as in the words, but they're also doing a really good job because all of their books are printed in really high quality. This is really good paper and good design and so on. And they're really doing a great job, I think. And yeah, just let's take a look inside. What is this all about? It starts off, first of all, you have this book belongs to ... thing, which I think is a really cool little gimmick there. It starts off with the little princess who wants to draw a comic, and well, she can't really draw all that well, and then a little poof, little magic comes along and tells her, well, you don't really need to draw all that well to make a comic. Can you draw this and this and this and this? Sure you can. And then they go on and do their own comic adventure, and this is basically the rest of the book. It's about princess getting captured, brave little knights trying to slay the dragon, and then they go on an adventure, but the elf will only help if he can tell you something about cartooning and comics in general. And so he explains a few things like, this is a panel and so on. And I think it's really well done. It's somewhat incorporated into the story, and it's really incorporated in a fun way. And for example, explaining how this works as movement of the elf when you put panels in there and so on. And this is really, on the one hand, it's really easy to understand, and it's also fun to read and fits into the story, especially because the knight's getting more and more annoyed with the little elf always talking about cartoons and never really talking about slaying the dragon. So you have a lot of obstacles, like a giant wall to overcome and so on, and then finally they meet the dragon and they have to fight him. And it turns out, well, I'm not going to talk about how it turns out, but it's really well done. There's all of the characters, as you can see, really simple forms, but this is, I think, not really. First of all, it's fitting the theme because it's a bit silly on the one hand, and it's clearly aimed at kids, but it's also kind of encouraging to see. This is a published comic, and I can draw this little elf. It's just triangle and a little circle, or even a circle, and a little rectangle and a few arms and legs, just as simple strokes, and then it's done. And so the clue here is, of course, that it's also talking about how does a comic work, and there's a little more explanation here at the end, and how to draw these characters. And you can see they're really simple, but really I think they're still very expressive, and it really shows what you can do with really simple tools there. And then I think this is really one of the sweetest parts of the whole book, as a little comic drawn by a girl, Eva, after reading this book, and you can see she draws these characters that was shown how to draw them. And it's just these 2 pages, but it's really sweet and really well done for a little girl. I think it's really cool, and actually the whole book made me just want to start draw some things and then start to doodle around. And this is probably the sweetest part of it all, because the poor dragon is the only one who's not happy at the end. Oh. So yeah, I think when you hear about this book, first what you're going to think first, and this was my Mac, sorry. What you're going to think about first is this one. This the German version. It's called Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. It's a really great book, but if you compare it, I mean, it's way bigger, and this is way more detailed. I mean, this is really, you know, we have charts and all those kinds of, you know, this is my thesis, and here, and let's look at that, and let's look at that, and these huge charts. I mean, it's a really interesting chart. Yeah, don't get me wrong. But if you want to turn someone on to, you know, how a comic works, especially if they're, you know, a bit on the younger side, I think they're not really going to want to read Understanding Comics, because it's, on the one hand, it's really a fantastic book, but it's really complex and you have to think about it a lot. And this one, it's really lighthearted, and you know, the stuff that is explained is not too deep. But on the other hand, just, you know, understanding how a panel works and how movement works is a huge thing, and this book really brings that across, I think. And there's a lot of other clever stuff that you might, you know, if you're a bit older, you might discover yourself. Because, for example, let's look at one example real quick. When they're going up the mountain, you can see here that the 3 panels are arranged in a way that the mountain line is always the same. So you could imagine the mountain still being, you know, the entire mountain being here. And this is something really clever, you know, and if you think about it as an adult, you probably see that, how that works out and how that looks good and how that creates even more movement on the page and stuff like that. So this is not only, I think, for younger readers, but also for, you know, just people who enjoy comics.